Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, bringing you a brand new spoiler discussion. And today I'm going to be talking about Skeleton Crew Episode 7, which is now streaming on Disney+. It released over here at 2 a.m. this morning UK time, last night if you live in the States, and it was directed by Lee Isaac Chung in his second episode of the series. And there's a lot to talk about. It's the penultimate episode of the show. Obviously, last week left us in a really interesting predicament. Characters going to different places. And this week, 36-minute runtime, a short runtime. So much happened. It was so well paced. I'm going to be giving my thoughts on this. So what I do want to hear is people watching at home, please do comment with your thoughts on Skeleton Crew, what you've been thinking of the series, what your predictions are for the finale next week. I'm really curious to know what people think of this, if they've been enjoying it, if they haven't, if they've been coming into it later and they're watching it weekly. It's really interesting to talk about. The series seems to have gone down really well with a lot of people, a lot of friends, which is great. It's made some really interesting discussions. And next week, we're going to have a lot more people on for the finale. Now, I think I'm aiming for 6 p.m. UK time next Wednesday. If it's not 6 p.m., it will end up being like 10 p.m. or something really late. So I want to try and get some people on for the finale. There's a lot to talk about with today, as I said. So maybe this will be maybe 20 minutes again, but I do want to hear from people. And if you're not watching it live, please do comment and I'll reply to them later on as soon as the video is fully up. That being said, if you want to find out about other videos, it's been pretty busy this week. We've had a few new reviews. We talked about A Real Pain. We've had a Golden Globe discussion with the monthly stream. And of course, we've got Skeleton Crew, Nosferatu, so many things happening. If you want to find out what we're working on, whatever videos we're doing, you can get us on social medias, linktree.com/cinemasavvy. That puts through to our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and Blue Sky. But enough of the intro. Let's talk the episodes. And very quickly, my thoughts on last week. I thought it was a really well-directed episode by Bryce Dallas Howard. It ended, as I said, with an interesting predicament for today. We've got one ship on their way to Atatin with all the pirates, the other ship, the kids, and they're clearly going to meet at some point and cross-reference that. So it put us in good stakes heading into a two-part finale as such. And a recurrent theme I've had on almost every video is praising the mystery of this show, right? We're 7 episodes in out of 8. There's 1 episode left. Let's say it's a 45-minute runtime. Once again, today's episode has answered a whole load of questions, which is what you want. Yeah, 1 episode left. Yeah, you want to almost know what's happening. And it's still left us asking more. And it's done such a remarkable job week to week of taking this premise, taking the simplistic story of some kids who've escaped by accident their home planet. They've gone on an adventure. They've ended up with pirates looking for some treasure. They've been able to make that work for 8 episodes, but almost as much a mystery as it has been an adventure, because we're still wondering, who is the supervisor? What happens to Renaud? What's going to happen to the kids? What's going to happen to Jude Law? What is the history with Jude Law, with Jod? And every week we've had hints, we've had some questions being answered, but then it'll ask us some more. And the ones it's asking us, it's just been really interesting. It's not taking the audience for granted, thinking they're silly or they're stupid. It's handling it in a really smart way, a really unique way. And I don't think any of the Star Wars shows have been structured like this so far. And I love how varied the Star Wars shows have been. You know, you have The Mandalorian, which is almost not episodic, but it's a different chapter. It could be a different story every week. You have Andor, which is kind of like, hey, here's a 12-episode series, but it's like 4 films, and you're going to get all these marrying segments with one another. You've got Acolyte, which was doing a whole split narrative structure. It's really interesting how these shows are done, yet Skeleton Crew has gone for, on paper, the simplest story, and is ended up being one of the most excellent stories. A story I didn't know how it would go. We've got a comment by Dave saying, I don't have massive hopes for the show, but it's exceeded in every way. It might have moved up a band off me. It makes me happy. This is how Star Wars shows should make you feel. Yeah, I agree. It's incredibly entertaining to watch, but it's not only entertaining, it's quite stimulating. And I like it when Star Wars is making its audience think. Don't get me wrong, I'm fine with most of Star Wars, but I've been completely blown away with the structure of the show, and there's got to be so much credit to John Watts being involved in the writing as a showrunner. I was very critical at that point when he was brought on board, and I'm sat there saying, okay, maybe I don't want a season 2, but what other ideas did John Watts have? Or maybe I'll talk about my finale predictions at the end of the video today. Could any of these characters pop up in a certain film releasing in 2026? Who knows? So it's a really interesting structure story carried with Jude Law and carried isn't a criticism of the show. He has been exceptional in the series. And I think today might be his best episode, because for the first time in my life, I looked at Jude Law and I was actually afraid of him, his performance. Now, I thought he's amazing in this, and I've watched a few more Jude Law films recently. I've got some Talented Mr. Ripley, so I know what that's about, so it's probably take that statement back by the time I see it, but his performance with the young actors today was incredible, and what they're able to do with his character. I know I'm going to go through it as a spoiler discussion, but even at the end of the episodes, just him in the vault, it's him by, okay, there's a droid, okay, fine, but what he's able to do, I'm not saying he's a defining actor, Emmy winning and stuff, but it's maybe not what I expected from Star Wars, especially this show. So that's me kind of giving a very polite oversight today as to how this journey has carried on. And I know that John Watts is directing the finale next week, which is going to be really interesting to see what goes on there. But if I talk about this, let's go visit the parents who we've not had too much time with recently. The episode opens with them trying to get a call sign out. We know that they've been trying to get some communication, and we get a really fun little segment of essentially the robots, the droids, stunning them one by one in almost like an Among Us type of game until there's one surviving. Can they get the comments there? Of course they can. But this sets up a really interesting predicament for later. Not only what was the message, but when the message is played later on in the episode, it ends up being one of the most important scenes, because it doesn't matter that the kids are on their way home. It doesn't matter that they've escaped. The only thing that matters from the comms is actually that Jude Law now knows who they are. And that obviously plays a big part of the finale. And it's a really, again, interesting concept that what they have been doing for a few episodes has ended up becoming a problem. And once again, this episode today answered a couple of questions whilst asking us some more. And I love that the show just keeps doing this. But really, the core of this episode is the Jude Law type stuff. And if we talk about some of the big moments which took place as they begin to arrive at Atatin, we get the pirates arriving there, Brutus as the captain. Sorry, I'm laughing because I'm going to talk about what happened, obviously. The gas, the idea of the planet is hidden behind all this. I love that. I don't know if Star Wars has done that before. I know that obviously you've had things in Star Wars, like with Solo, where you have the Falcon going in and out of the hyperspace tunnels with just 7 parsecs. You've had, obviously, Clone Wars has done so many exploration episodes on different planets, different societies, different races. But it was a really interesting perspective, just having these pirates just sat outside, knowing how close they are, and the captain is still thinking that this isn't true, this is a load of nonsense. And you get this great moment with John where he basically says, well, you're just thick to think it would be sat there in front of you like glitz and glamour, which is very interesting. It's very real. That happens a lot in real life. People have certain expectations for things. It doesn't go the way they think, and that's where they then call the shot. But with this, by bringing in the Onyx-Sider, so I sat there thinking we're going to have them meet in space. There's going to be like a hyperspace, not battle as such, but I thought today's episode would be a race to Atatin that would spend time with both parties. But it really wasn't that. It was almost done in between, which I love, because we got some really good confrontation with some of the leads. Them pulling in the Onyx Cinder with the hyperspace, the kids clawing Brutus, putting on the fake voice that was used earlier in the series with the robot voice. It was setting up for a lot of interesting stuff, but the moment in which Judd kills Brutus at point blank range is, for Star Wars standards, for TV standards, I thought it was one of the most brutal things we've seen. Star Wars has never really done cold-blooded killing in this way. Having a literal person like chained up, knowing they can't do anything, and at point blank range is just executed. Okay, with it, going to show the body after, but the choice of camera, the shot, the cuts, the laser obviously being the cutting moment, Jude Law's facial expressions, it was a great scene. Now, granted, Brutus enters the Star Wars universe as another character that looked really cool and didn't do anything. I'm sure there'll be a comic on him one day and his adventures as a lieutenant, whatever it was. And I did really enjoy the pirate stuff we saw back in the opening scene of the first episode. I loved all of that. So I was really interested to see what they were going to do today, but we didn't get that. Maybe it means we get something similar next week. Maybe we never get it at all. But it's interesting that it's set up a predicament with some of these key players that okay, Bruce is now off the board. John's got control of that ship, and the Onyx Cinder's there, and he knows the kids are on board. So it does an interesting job at starting to set up more stakes for how the episode has sort of progressed. And I'm going to talk about Dave's comments. I just read them a little bit later. Let's talk about the Onyx Cinder. An interesting twist to a degree that you can only be captain of one ship. Great comedic moment. The pirate code being brought in again. Obviously, it feels very Pirates of the Caribbean because of how much they've gone about the pirate code, especially in the third film. But it's fun to see it in Star Wars, and it's a little bit different. And I love that SM-33, I keep calling him Smee. I love that Smee is basically just lives by that code because he is a pirate droid. And he's still got this unique design, and it's Nick Frost, who, again, surprised me in the show. I've really enjoyed this. Didn't think we'd get a droid character as involved as we have. He's had some great comedic moments today when they do the claimsies on the pirate ship and everything such as that. Whether that's the droid having a bit of, not breaking his circuits, but trying to use a bit of preferential treatment on the kids compared to Jod. I loved all that sequence. Taking out everyone that's been around them. Basically leaving the pirates out of the game. They're on their ship. Here's the Onyx Cinder. These kids, the Onyx Cinder is the key. I like that it's the key, that it's the only way that you could get through the barrier is with that ship. I liked that premise, and it puts a bit of a, not special tone on it, but it then asks the questions of, okay, so what happened when this crashed all them years ago? What happened with Renaud? And I like that it's continuing to do this. But alongside this, we then get maybe one of the best scenes of the entire show so far, which is Jude Law taking control of the ship, not for the first time, killing SM-33, or is he dead? I guess that's a question. Decapitating him with the lightsaber he took back in the vault in episode 5, which kind of is Wim's fault still, because if Wim hadn't have done that, maybe Jude Law wouldn't know that there was a lightsaber in there to be had. And I know I spoke about it last week, that I thought that the cutaway ending of episode 5, I'd never said it felt cheap, but I remember sort of saying somewhat that I wish we had a little bit more as to that lightsaber tease to get that today. And it looks like it could play an integral part in the finale as well. I loved it. The genuine fear. The 4 young actors have been great in this series. And I know people can be very critical of child actors, myself included. But they've genuinely been great in this show, and they've been so well written as children, which I think is the struggle that Hollywood has, is whenever you see these young characters written, they never actually feel like kids. They just feel like an adult in a kid's body. It feels like an adult writing an experience of being a 7-year-old. It's not really that at all. And this feels a bit more like that. And in that same scene, you have sort of Wim talking about assessments, that he's got to go back to the way things were. He's been on an adventure outside of space. He's almost died multiple times, and now he's worried about school, because guess what? Kids do worry about that sort of stuff. And I like that this show has really played with that idea of these 4 young kids on this adventure. But going back to the key story segments, which is Jude taking control of the ship, his criticism of the kids, the acting again is great. And I'm not doing the usual old points. As I said, I've loved these kid actors, but a pirate, maybe a parent, maybe adults would in that situation be just raging that they've continued to be followed by these children, that they've continued to be there, that he's had enough. But I still ask that question, is he really capable of killing them? Does he really have any intention to kill these children? I still don't think he does. Granted, we've seen him kill Brutus in cold blood, like in the most... Probably, I mean, I don't know how much pain he was in being, sort of cussed by the claw from Toy Story, but it's quite something to have probably your back snapped or something, then getting shot at point blank range by someone's job that you took from them. It's a pretty brutal way to go. Whether his body's just now just stuck on the other ship, I don't know. I'm curious, but I like this sorts of weird questions. Or is it just, is it on the stowaway as well? But anyway, going back to it, the Jude Law stuff really carried it. And that scene in particular, it then became I feel like every thumbnail I've done has been Jude Law in the show, and it has become Jude Law's show. Yes, it's an Amblin adventure. Yes, it's got all these great young actors and these fun stories and a really cool droid of SM-33. Yes, there's a story of parents, but it feels like every time Jude Law is on screen, it is his show. We're just watching along, seeing this great performance. A theatrical performance. It's the sort of not pantomime villain, but he's clearly enjoying playing a pirate. And Jude Law's a great actor. I still think he was had done by the Fantastic Beasts. That's not his fault. But we've been able to see such a range with his performance in these episodes. He came at the final scene of episode 2. I'm still wondering, was he a Jedi? Was he not a Jedi? Did he just have the Force? How trained was he with a lightsaber? His stances with it today even could ask those questions. He wasn't just playing around with it. He used it sparingly in 2 sequences as a weapon. And calling the kids spoiled was really interesting. And I know I spoke about a theory a few weeks ago that I think he could have been a Jedi kicked out before Order 66. I still maintain that's possible. I still also maintain that he could have been a survivor of Order 66, but he's clearly someone that has no time for children, no time for family, or is jealous of those children being kids or having families and having normal lives. Maybe the reason he's a pirate is because he had everything taken from him and now it's his job to take from others. And these are some of the questions I'm wondering, will we get an answer next week? I really hope we do. I really hope this series rounds out. And as much as I've loved it and I'd take a second season with the same creative team, I would love it if everything fits in a neat bow for this lovely finale, and I do think we're going to get that. It feels like more of a traditional tale, and it's full credit again to the writing team. But yeah, the Jude Law stuff, even getting down to the vault sequences, we get to see the ship landing, we get to see the normal people, we get a very interesting cameo for those that don't know. Stephen Fry is the voice of the supervisor in the episodes. He's in the credits. Could Stephen Fry be Renard surviving centuries later? Could it be like Tron and be a master control program? I do not know, but I'm really curious to find out more now about the AT-AT side of things. Yes, we've been curious for a while of the supervisor, his role, and what the history is of the planet, but now we've spent some time visually there. We've spent time with the characters there. It feels like we have a few more of these questions rising, and it all feels a bit too easy. Just saying he's a Republic emissary and that's going to get him access to the vaults and to all the money. You know, he says it's easier to deal with droids than people. Maybe the supervisor's a droid too. I'm curious of what happens next week. I think there's some great questions to be answered. I think that Jude Law's character is going to be one of the most important things in the finale. I haven't even got to the cliffhanger yet, but just the sequence of him with the treasure is so well acted. It isn't just great pirates find a treasure he's done for. You go out to the opening scene of episode 1, and this is a character that just continued to not find the treasure, that he was betrayed by his crew because he couldn't get to the treasure. Yet here we are. He's got 1,339 volts of gold potentially to go through. The ultimate plunder, as they like to call it. So I'm excited to see what happens. There's a few thoughts I have, a few theories I have. I do think we're going to see the supervisor. I mean, if Stephen Fry ends up in Star Wars, that's wonderful in a visual perspective, not just a voice role. But at the same time, if the twist is that, you know, Reynolds put his... I don't know, has anyone in Star Wars ever put their brain into a computer or something like that? Probably. There's probably something unique, but I really wonder if we might see something completely new within a character next week, something we've not seen in the series before. I don't want to say like a Wizard of Oz type thing, but it really could be something like that where, you know, a pirate hidden behind the identity of the supervisor for centuries. There's so many questions, and I think we're going to get the answers, and I'm excited to get those answers. And then obviously on a personal level, this not being just a Jude Law show, this is obviously about the kids. We now have the parents with the children with Jude Law and a lightsaber. It's a cliffhanger. I don't think it's a deep cliffhanger. I don't think I'm fearing the peril for any of them now they're back at their home planet. I think it's the sort of ending where the episode has ended at such a great point within the story that we're just desperate to find out what happens next. Not to find out what happens to the parents, but to find out what is the next scene going to be. And I'm excited for that. And I think that's great that we've got that 7 episodes in. We're still really excited about the finale. as I said, this series is completely blowing me away. And a lot of that does come down to the writing and does come down to Jude Law's wonderful performance. And yeah, that's most of the things I've got to say about today's episode. I'm surprised there's been 20 minutes on it. That's really cool. I'm just going to go for a couple of comments. Dave saying Jude Law looks great with that lightsaber. Absolutely. I know I said something. Could we see a character pop up in future Star Wars stuff? This isn't a theory, but if Jude Law was to survive the events of this show, I'm not saying he wins, but I'm saying if he survives the show, let's say there's a second season, you could bring him back. Let's say, I'm sure it would have leaked if he's in The Mandalorian and Grogu, but there is films happening concurrently within the Star Wars cycle and productions are in place. If there was a thieving person with a lightsaber, who knows? Maybe it's not too big a deal for The Mandalorian for the Thrawn stuff potentially going down, but it feels like Jude Law's done enough that you could see this role have a bit of an extension. And I don't just mean that with books and comics or games or stuff like that. I feel that there's a really interesting character that I'd like to know more about, and if opportunity presents itself. If he's killed in the finale, I understand that. Pirate wanting to go down with the treasure, maybe something traditional, something pirate-esque. Sure, I could see it happening. Defeated in combat, maybe. But I'd like to see more from him. And that's a great sign of what the show's done, is that you're wanting more from an antagonist. And Star Wars is so good at doing antagonists when they do it. So, yeah, that's something that I'm keeping in mind, that to me the door's politely open. He probably will be killed off because he's an evil villain in a kid's series that's an adventure series. So, and it looks like that he would die for that treasure, wouldn't he? I'm just going to bring this one comment. My only criticism is the first time I've noticed the whole season from the lift down. And you could see it was all on the volume, but I still lived it. Yeah, that's it. I didn't even spoke about the volume once in all these episodes. You're probably bang on, actually. And I get it's a trickier set, it's a tricky environment to do. You know, you've got this small character in this huge door opening. It feels very, I don't want to call it like Jabba's palace. It felt very Fallout, that you've got all the hidden vaults at the sub-planet level. I'm curious to know what else. I know they've said obviously the money's in those vaults, but even with the parent side of things, they speak about, we were going to tell this to all of you when you graduated. Maybe there's more stuff to be told about, quote, what the great work is. But I'm excited to see what comes next. I'm curious to see what comes next. And I think that's a good way to round out this episode today. So that is the spoiler discussion. As I said, I think I've gone through all the core things. I just love the Stephen Throw. I think that really caught me off guard when I read that about that credits earlier today. I'm glad I chose to find out about that, because I look a right idiot if I didn't. And Dave put still tops his styles, so we can't wait for the finale. Absolutely. UK people, 2 p.m. next Wednesday it drops. America, 6 p.m. Tuesday night. We'll be live with a spoiler discussion on the finale next week. Whether that's at 6 p.m. or maybe late, like 10 p.m., I do not know yet. We'll confirm it on our social medias, which is always a good time to plug those. So go get us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Blue Sky. We're posting on all of them. We're posting when we're going live, videos we're working on, and a few other little things. So if you do want to find out more, you can do so. If you've enjoyed this video, then please, of course, like and comment. We're more than happy to hear about people's theories. Maybe you've read something, maybe I've missed something. Please do comment that and I'll have a look at those. And if you enjoyed this, maybe consider hitting the subscribe button. As I said, we're live next week. We've got every live Star Wars show, every live action Star Wars show covered on this channel. There are playlists on the homepage. We've gone through everything, and as we're slowly rounding out on Skeleton Crew, it is not unselfish to say I'm looking ahead, but Andor Season 2 drops in April. It's unavoidable, so that's going to be a big one for us. Whether we get 12-week episodes or we get at week 1 3 episodes like Season 1, there'll be a lot of coverage for that, and there'll be coverage after Andor involving Andor. There'll be coverage before Andor with discussions and a few of the things I'm going to be working on. So we can cover that in as much detail as we can. To be a fan of Star Wars, do stick around. But that is going to do it for today. As I said, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.